ejection and migration of any Kenyans or even refugees that has been taken by the Kenya government. So I think there is some misinformation somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Cabinet Secretary. I think that terminates our interaction with the Prime Cabinet Secretary. We will now move to question number 007 and 042. Prime Cabinet Secretary, you may now leave at your pleasure.
Okay. Nice to see you. Come again.
Don't forget that.
All the honorable senators, the CS in charge of cooperatives and micro and small and medium enterprises is in the House. For purposes of responding to question number 007 by the Senator for Migori County, Senator Eddie Okech, and thereafter to respond to question number 042 by Senator Veronica Maina. Let me take this opportunity to welcome the CS to the Senate. Honorable CS, you only have 2 questions directed to you this morning. I will call upon the Senator, nominated Senator Beatrice Akinyi on behalf of Senator Eddie Okech to proceed and ask question number 007. You may proceed, Honorable Senator.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And thank you once more for granting me the opportunity to read out the question by the Migori Senator as instructed by himself. I want to welcome the CS, the Cabinet Secretary, one Honorable Wycliffe Ambassador Oparanya, who was also my deputy party leader and a committed man at that. Honorable Speaker, this is a question number 007 by the Senator for Migori County, Senator Eddie Okech, to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Cooperatives and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development. Question A is, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the failure by the former Kenya Cooperative Creameries, KCC, and now by the new Kenya Cooperative Creameries, new KCC, to pay terminal dues to former employees of KCC whose contracts were terminated in the year 1999? B, when can the affected former employees expect to receive their terminal dues? And lastly, Mr. Speaker, sir, could the Cabinet Secretary also indicate whether the former employees have received payment for the cooperative society shares they held as at the time of their exit from KCC, and if not, provide reasons for the same? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable CS, you may now proceed to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to answer the question. I will have to go through the journey, take you through the journey of the new KCC for the House to actually grasp where we are. Our response as a ministry, the origin of the Kenya Cooperatives Creameries Limited, KCC Limited, dates back to 22nd August 1925, when it was incorporated as a limited liability company. Later, on 8th February 1932, it was registered as a cooperative society, whereby it ran its operation until the year 1999, when it was then placed under receivership by the Kenya Commercial Bank, who was its debenture holder. In the year 2000, private individuals incorporated KCC 2000 Limited and acquired KCC business through bids invited by the receiver manager then, PricewaterhouseCoopers. KCC was liquidated. Therefore, it ceased to exist as a cooperative society nor a party corporate, since it was sold off to KCC 2000 Limited, which was a private company. On 6 June 2003, following a cabinet approval, the government of the Republic of Kenya bought back all the assets that had been sold to the KCC 2000 Limited. On 19th November 2004, new KCC was incorporated as a limited liability company with 100% government shareholding, thus converting its status to a state corporation under certificate number C11-358-353-8. In the year 1988, during the subsistence of KCC Limited, the claimants above filed an industrial case, number 24 of 1988, wherein they had sued KCC Limited, following termination of their employment after a strike had been called by the union. The matter was heard, and the court made a ruling that KCC Limited was liable to pay them. However, KCC Limited had collapsed, went into liquidation, and subsequently wound up and ceased to exist by the Kenya Gazette notice of 4th March 2003. At the time the claimants were filing the suit in the year 1988, new KCC Limited was not in existence and therefore was not a party to the suit. Similarly, new KCC Limited, having not been in existence when the claimants were in employment, it was clearly not their employer. The said claimants were employees of KCC Limited and not new KCC Limited, thus cannot be compensated by an organization they did not work for. New KCC Limited and KCC Limited cannot be said to be one and the same in law. However, a vesting order that was subsequently issued on 15th November 2005 was vested free from all encumbrances. That in accordance with the Transfer of Business Act, Section 3, a public notice was done and was printed in the Daily Nation on 28 June 2005 in regard to the government's purchasing the business and assets of KCC 2000 Limited. The employees did not object the notice to claim their dues as is required by the law, and thus Section 8 of the same Act came into effect that a claimant cannot institute a claim in respect of any liability upon expiry of 6 months. In the year 2013, the claimants filed a suit, Nairobi number 1299, 2013, John Kihato, Barrow, and 108 others, versus New KCC Limited and the Attorney General, seeking to be paid a sum of 204,417,555.50 Kenya shillings at the High Court. The matter was heard and concluded, and the High Court made a ruling that New KCC Limited was liable to pay KCC Limited former employees' dues. Subsequently, New KCC Limited filed an appeal against the High Court decision at the Court of Appeal under Civil Appeal number 191 of 2018. A 3-judge bench on 10th July 2020 held that New KCC was not liable for the liability of KCC Limited, which included the terminal benefits and unpaid SACCO shares of the said claimants. However, notwithstanding the above, and absolving of the New KCC Limited from the said liabilities, in accordance with the law, that the appellate judges implored upon the Attorney General's office verbatim. Having said so, however, and legalities aside, we hold on to the hope that the Attorney General will find it in her to advise government to honor its word and pay the first respondents who have suffered long. In view of the above comment by the appellant judges, my ministry wrote to the Attorney General seeking an advisory on the same. In a letter dated 3rd October 2024, reference number AG-CONF/6B/18-2, the Attorney General provided an advisory, made several recommendations, including, number 1, formation of an interministerial committee consisting of the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, the Ministry of Cooperatives and MSME Development, and the National Treasury to look into the matter and resolve the issue with finality. The committee should be tasked to collect, audit, verify, authenticate, and validate the claims and recommend whether the same should be settled and to what extent within reasonable timelines. That upon conclusion of its work, the petitioners should be engaged in out-of-court settlement with a view of finding an amicable solution to the impasse and notification of the outcome to be done to the Senate. My ministry has already written to the Treasury, the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, to nominate suitable officers to implement the Attorney General's advisory. When the committee is constituted and completes its work, the recommendation thereof will be communicated to the Senate. For question number B, when can the affected former employees be expected to receive their terminal dues? My response, Mr. Speaker, sir, the former employees may be paid once the Interministerial Committee completes its work and recommends payment and National Assembly appropriates the required funds in the national budget. On the last question, could the Cabinet Secretary also indicate whether the former employees have received payment for their cooperative society shares they held as at the time of the exit from KCC, and if not, provide reasons for the same? My response, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that I'm not aware of any complaints on payment of cooperative shares held by the time KCC Limited was liquidated. I, however, am aware of claims of funds deducted from the then employees' salaries that had not been remitted in their cooperative society in respect of their shares. This amount is being considered together with other employment dues as explained in the above response. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Betty Akinyi, you may now ask your two supplementary questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Once more, my two supplementary questions are, Honorable CS, do you have an inventory of these former employees, and if so, how many? You've described them as have suffered for so long, and so do you know how many they are, and what are the timelines of the finalities you talk about in terms of the ministerial committee work and the letter you've written to the Treasury? Do you have timelines for them? That is one question. Honorable Speaker, the second question is, what is the state of the assets of the KCC Limited?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the full list of the number of employees affected. As I've stated, this has been an issue of a court case for a long time, and the ministry is aware of what was going on. I've clearly stated that this matter is now at the interministerial level, and we are doing all we can. These are Kenyans who have suffered for a long time, and we feel, in fact, some of them have even passed on. These issues are being followed by their siblings, and we are committed to making sure that they get their dues as soon as we finalize our interministerial consultation, and as soon as proper appropriation is done by the National Assembly so that these people can be paid. In terms of assets of the KCC, as I've clearly mentioned, KCC was bought by the new KCC, and they took over all the assets, and the government then paid about 500 million Kenya shillings for that consideration of the assets, and now these assets are under the ownership of the new KCC.
Senator Margaret Kamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. May I start, Mr. Speaker?
Before you ask your question, Honorable Kamar, Honorable CS, I will allow about 10 senators to ask their supplementary questions. Just note them down, and then you respond to them at a go.
Okay, thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I start by congratulating the CS, being a new member of the cabinet and being here for the first time in my case. I know he worked very well with you, Mr. Speaker, when you were both ministers, and he did a very good job, and I don't doubt that he's going to do the same thing in this ministry. Mr. Speaker, KCC, original KCC, and I want to thank the minister for giving us the chronological, the historical events that have taken place in KCC. I am a beneficiary because my father was a dairy farmer and I benefited a lot through our education system. The minister has addressed, as per the question, the issue of the staff. How about the issue of the farmers and the shares of the farmers? When we talk of the assets which were bought in the year 2000 by new KCC, what was paid to the farmers? Because my late father died with the hope that one day his shares in KCC shall be paid to us, his children, but we have not had anything of that sort. Did the government consider the shares that were owned by the farmers, because the assets really belong to the farmers? They didn't belong to nobody. They belong to farmers. Among them, a very huge population in both Elgeyo Marakwet, where I was born, and Uasin-Gishu, where I reside. What consideration was given to the farmers?
Senator Mbugua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Cabinet Secretary, for your response. My question is, the recommendation to form this committee was done 6 months ago. And from your response, you are only talking about 2 letters being taken. What assurance can you give this House on your commitment to ensure that this matter is resolved within the shortest time possible? Thank you.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I was a secretary of the Ministry of Cooperatives, the issue was that farmers used to deposit their milk there daily, and therefore they build their shares on a daily basis, and the assets belong to them. The ownership of cooperatives is usually on equal basis, so that you may find one farmer doesn't have a bigger share than the other. What effort has been made to make sure that these liters of milk, that there is a record for them, and it forms part of the ownership of the farmers, which is informed now by the value of the current value of the assets. And could that be accounted so that when you deal with the employees, we also deal with the original members of the cooperative society? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Esi Okenyuri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would also wish to know why now we have talked about KCC then, but new KCC, Mr. Speaker, is currently frustrating farmers by delaying in terms of payment. Then what happens to milk that has already been supplied and sold? At the same time, remember, we have powdered milk sneaking from neighboring countries and flooding our market, so it's actually compressing whatever we have here, and so many of those processors have dead stock. So what is the ministry doing to mitigate that, and at the same time for compensate farmers who've supplied milk and new KCC are sold but not paying them? Thank you.
Senator Morango.
Asante sana, Mr. Speaker. Swali langu linahusu muda, kwa sababu unajua waziri, swali usema mnyonge mnyongeni na haki yake umpe. Nimeona umesema kwamba kuna mazungumzo inaendelea ili wale ambao hawakulipa pesa zao waweze kupata pesa zao. lakini ukipiga hesabu ni takriban miaka 27 imeisha. Wengi washakufa, bado wanangojea pesa zao. Waziri, ningekuuliza kama ungekuwa wewe, ungekuwa na uwezo wa kungojea miaka karibu 30 pesa zinje, na hali uko na mambo ambayo unafaa kutumia ile pesa kufanya. Kwa hivyo inawezekanaje utupe muda ambao unaona kama unakandilia inaweza kumaliziwa ili hao watu waweze kufaidika na pia waweze kupata nafuu, kwa sababu hiyo pesa yao imekaa kwa muda mrefu sana. Na ya mwisho waziri, ni kwamba unajua nchi inashikiliwa sana na wakulima. Vyama vingi vya ushirika ambavyo vimeanguka na vingi vinaenda na pesa wakulima, vimeenda kwa sababu ya uongozi mbaya katika vyama vya ushirika. Unafanyaje kuhakikisha kwamba jambo kama hili lilifanyika katika KCC haitarudiwa tena? Asante sana Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mandago.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My supplementary question, Honorable Speaker, is in relation to what the Cabinet Secretary has said in terms of the assets. Honorable Speaker, I asked a statement in September 2024 on the issue of assets of new KCC, and the Cabinet Secretary had committed to provide a list of assets with its valuation. We have not received to date. We also know that the 500 million that was paid was actually not commensurate to the value of the assets of KCC then. What are you doing as a Cabinet Secretary to secure the assets of new KCC as they are? Because, Honorable Cabinet Secretary, you have a very rogue board, and you know what they were trying to do. You know what they have done with they wanted to do with the new KCC headquarters. Of course, you know the Tetra Pak house, and you also know the one in Ngong Road has already been leased out. What are you doing to secure the assets of new KCC? And when are you going to provide a comprehensive list of the assets of new KCC?
Senator Mgatana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was listening carefully to the answer the Honorable Cabinet Secretary was giving, and I wanted to draw his attention to the decision of the Court of Appeal when they negatived the decision of the High Court that the workers do not have a right. You said something very fundamental there. You said that the Court of Appeal said, despite, aside from the legalities, please, Attorney General, find a way for these workers to be paid. What I'm finding curious, Mr. Speaker, and this is where the question is, why, as a minister, and by the way, I'm glad that you took it up and wrote a letter to the Attorney General, but what the Court of Appeal is simply saying is that there is no legal basis for the payment of these workers, but there is a moral basis. That is, as ex gratia payment is due and owing. So the question is, why couldn't you call the litigants or their committee, just agree? You just tell them this is what the court has said, this is the end of it. Why can't we agree on 500,000 each person or 200,000? You negotiate and then seek the budget through a cabinet paper. Why then start forming interministerial committees? I don't know what. Why follow this long-sighted, winded process? Don't you think that's a way of trying to escape responsibility? Why can't you just shorten this process, write a cabinet paper, get funding for it, and pay these people? And why can't you do just a shortcut for this matter to be resolved? Because all the question the Senate is asking you is, can you shorten the timelines to finish this matter? Why can't you, Mr. Minister? I submit, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Veronica.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity, and welcome to Senate CS Cooperatives and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development. You have a big assignment in your hands, Honorable CS. And when I look at the answer you have given us regarding claims and terminal dues by employees who are in KCC in 1999, I get very concerned, because when our citizens invest in assets they believe to be co-owned by government, it means it's like a bond of guarantee that they cannot lose their investment and their dividend. But when a dispute is this prolonged and it's affecting people who are not very well able financially, it's not a very good statement. In fact, the treasury bills, why Kenyans invest in treasury bills is because there is a guarantee to that treasury bill returning dividends. So CS, when do you think you can pay these former employees of KCC, and why has the new KCC refused to oblige to the directive of a minimum price guarantee of 50 shillings per litre, a complaint which has come from a county like Nyandarua? I spoke to a few residents from Nyandarua whose milk is being sold below 40 shillings. Why are we having that confusion when the policy guideline on the price, the minimum guaranteed price for their milk should not be below 50 shillings to the farmer and 3 shillings for administrative cost? Why do we have those disparities?
Senator Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, my supplementary question, I listened to the answers by the CS, Honorable Speaker, and the answers are very diplomatic because the CS said we may pay after the subcommittee, the cabinet subcommittee finishes its job and Parliament allocates the resources. What I expected the CS to say, Honorable Speaker, is as the CS in charge of cooperatives, he will allocate resource, he'll budget for 2025, 26 and put in the budget. National Assembly appropriates what a proposal that you've already given. They don't initiate the proposal. So that's why the answers are basically diplomatic. And what Senator Mugadana said, basically this is a long way of delaying because most of the employees, Honorable Speaker, have already passed on. The children, the spouses, are the ones they've been waiting for the last 30 years, Honorable Speaker. Unless basically, as a country, we say, may these people then, instead of using the law to frustrate our people, can we then auction the property for new KCC? Because, you know, they are forming new companies to evade responsibility, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Roba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this matter for KCC was actually executed at the Labour Committee where I sit, Mr. Speaker. And I wanted to ask a supplementary question to Waziri because I have seen that in his response, he has put a chronological order of what transpired. And from his response, from your response, Waziri, you can see that there are 3 issues that are being highlighted. Number 1, no one really knows how a company was sold on the basis of assets and profits, but liabilities were put aside. Because we have engaged with the workers in the Labour Committee, and they were repeatedly informed that they were not part of the agreement and nothing to do with them was going to be absorbed in the new KCC. Much later, when they went to court, which you have also listed here,